Hello. This is the chap who normally comes on at the start of these podcasts, this time affecting a simply dreadful British accent, for if I don't miss my guess, you're listening to this as part of The Rack, the Icebox Radio Theatre's new podcast of fantasy and science fiction. And nothing says fantasy quite so much as an American actor attempting to sound like something he's not. Now, we love all of our listeners, of course, but we especially love those who have stepped through the velvet ropes to become a listening supporter. Castles and spaceships are quite inexpensive to render here in the world of audio, but petrol money for actors as well as new microphones and equipment are somewhat less so. So we continue to depend on you, the wonderful listener, to help us continue to bring these stories to the world. Simply go to our website, that's iceboxradio.org, and look for the word support across the top of the page there. On that page, you can learn all about our Patreon, you can learn about our membership program, or even just how to drop a $5 in the post. We're not picky. We just appreciate whatever kind attention you and your checkbook may be able to offer us. And now, since brevity be the soul of wit, I yield for this evening's presentation. You are driving in a dark forest, the pine boughs heavy with snow. At the end of a long dirt track road, you arrive at your destination. It's a small, weather-beaten motel called Toujours Gelée. It's not much to look at, really. Just a single weather-beaten shack surrounded by a half-dozen equally run-down cabins. Out back, there's a dingy fishing dock right next to the spaceport. And a few picnic tables for cleaning fish conveniently placed right next to the time portal. So it's easy to dispose of the chum. Come up to the office now. Let the bear in the tuxedo take your bags. Ask the time-traveling Viking at the concierge desk if you have any questions, and then step up to the main desk to meet the owner, Old Pierre.
Hello, and welcome to Toujours Gelée Motel. Looking for something to do? We have all kinds of tourist information right over here. I invite you to select a brochure from The Rack.
Perhaps you're the type of person who loves to hear stories because they're not real, because they allow you to escape the humdrum rhythms of your own life and live, for a time, in a place of fantasy, wonder, magic, and romance. If so, this is not the story for you. It's not so much that the story contains gritty realism, or the absence of lyric fantasy. No. You might want to skip this particular story because it is so real in its unreality. Your world probably does not have black lakes skirted by lines of sinister forest. It probably does not have isolated islands, desolate rocky outcroppings, seemingly unable to support the simplest life. And if your world does not have such mysterious lakes nor such feral islands, the islands that are not in your world surely lack the twisted, gnarled spires of a manor house rising like a black octopus into the gray sky above the inky water. If, however, you are looking for such a world, our story may be just the place for you. If so, get comfortable. Find a dark corner where you're unlikely to be disturbed, and give us a moment to allow the others to make a graceful, if hurried, exit. Still here? Excellent. Now where were we? Oh, yes. Elderbury Lodge. If you were to see Elderbury Lodge from a great height, say, the gondola of a mad Prussian prince's dirigible, to give one example, you would be struck by the organic quality of the place. It appears to be a house grown more than built. Turrets rise in wavy lines. Windows refuse to be rectangles. And the only visible door is a massive double affair, which is higher on one side than the other. Now, have the Mad Prince swing his dirigible slightly to the east, and you will see a V of ripples sweeping from a certain point on the lake, like a giant arrow pointing toward the house. And at the very point of that arrow, you will just be able to make out a boat. It's a tiny, rickety boat, which appears to be particularly unseaworthy. It contains 2 people. One is an old Norwegian who looks particularly Norwegian and aggressively old. And the other is the heroine of our tale, a girl of some 14 years named Catherine, with a C like the great Russian empress. And because describing her would take many, many paragraphs of narration, and I feel I have spoken enough for now, I'm going to drop you in her capable hands. She can tell you all about who she is and what she's doing here.
And why it's all so tragic.
Yes, that too.
What?
I said, and why it's all so tragic. I was speaking to the narrator.
Well, make it short. We're just a few minutes from shore.
Elderberry Lodge looks like a sinister place.
That's because it is.
I like sinister places.
Oh, you think that now. But I can read people, girl. And you're the kind that plays at darkness. You kids with your powder and rouge and black nail polish. But when you're introduced to Elderberry Lodge, you'll meet real darkness.
I'm not worried.
No?
No.
And why is that, may I ask?
Because I'm of the same blood as the Elderberries. Whatever darkness resides at that house is in me already.
Let's hope you're right. Let's hope you're right.
Oh!
What is it, girl?
There, in the high window, I saw a face.
There.
Right there. It's gone now, but I sure saw a very beautiful woman. Her face was sad and lonely and white as snow.
You're pointing at the north wing.
Am I?
Yeah? There's no way you could have seen a face in the north wing. That wing's been closed up for years.
But I'm sure I saw...
Closed up for years. You remember I said that.
Presently, the tiny boat reached shore. The twisted old Norwegian led Catherine up the path toward the front door of the massive house. All the while, she kept her eye on the windows of the north wing, but there was no more movement to be seen. Indeed, there was no movement anywhere outside the house. It was as if the place was quite dead.
Come along now. Your place is near the kitchen.
My.
Not what you were expecting?
No, it's better.
Catherine was quite overwhelmed by what she saw. The first room of Elderberry Lodge was as high as the roof itself, at least 4 stories above. Rafters and joists joined in a spiderweb maze up at the ceiling, and Catherine could see creatures flying from rafter to rafter. As she picked her valise and followed the old Norwegian, he led her straight ahead toward a massive staircase, easily as wide as 2 automobiles laid end to end. At the top of the stairs was a portrait, nearly as wide as the stairs themselves. It depicted a tall, thin man who gazed out at the viewer with a hard jaw, but very sad eyes. He had a stalk of salt and pepper hair that stuck straight up, and a nose as long and thin as a butter knife. And though Catherine, being ill-inclined to use looking glasses very often, would never have seen it herself, the man in the portrait bore a definite resemblance to her. She stopped at the bottom of the stairs and gazed up. The Norwegian looked back over his shoulder, glanced from portrait to girl, and grumbled to himself. He could see the resemblance, too, and he didn't like it. Catherine was led past the massive stairs to a small door, so low that the old Norwegian actually had to duck to fit through. Inside, she found herself in a rabbit warren of hallways. She had to keep on the heels of the old Norwegian for fear of being lost. After no small amount of time, she was led through a door and into a quite remarkable kitchen. Pots and pans seemed to be everywhere, stewing and rattling on multiple stoves. A large, black, cast-iron oven was in the center of the room, and though she could see hot flames licking at the grate, Catherine felt little heat coming from it. To one side, there was a woman. Her dress was from another century, threadbare, stained, and gray. Her hair, white as the snow, hung like wisps of smoke around her face, always concealing part of her features, so that you could never see 2 eyes at once. But her most striking feature was her height. The woman had to reach down to stir a pot, as she was easily 7 foot tall. Catherine could not help but gasp. The tall woman was one of the most remarkable things she had ever seen.
Oma,
Aye,
she's here.
I can see that. Tend to the eel flesh I've got hanging in the larder. It needs skinning.
Do you hear what I said? I've brought the girl.
I heard you well enough. Now off with you. Tea will be on shortly.
Don't understand.
Put down the bag.
Yes, ma'am.
You must be hungry. There's a bit of bread on the table.
I'm fine, really.
Nonsense. Besides, you haven't lived until you've had bread baked in a wood oven. Came out just a few minutes before you arrived.
Here?
Yes,
Thank you. It's good.
of course it's good.
What's the spread on top?
Butter.
It doesn't taste quite like butter.
Imagine it doesn't to you. You're probably used to butter from cow's milk. You continue eating without a stop.
I said it didn't taste like butter. I didn't say it wasn't good.
So, you're Catherine, the niece.
Yes.
I'm Catherine, the cook, though everyone calls me Oma.
Are you a C or a K?
No one calls me Catherine, nor Kate the Cursed.
Shakespeare, The Taming of the Shrew.
I'm called by Oma.
From the German term for grandmother, an endearing or familiar name, rather than the formal Großmutter.
Do you always speak like this?
I try not to, but I often don't know what else to say. It does not endear me to people my own age. That's why I'm here.
You're a cast-off, then?
Tragically, yes. I think it's wonderful. May I see my uncle? I'd like to thank him for taking me in.
Nobody sees the master. Ever.
But my mother and he were brother and sister. It was she who wrote to him.
I wouldn't know about the affairs of the family, but we have rules in this house, and I know how girls your age feel about rules. A maid with a rule is like a young boy with a rock. In both cases, things get broken. But you will obey our rules here.
I only asked to see my uncle.
And since you asked so nicely, this time I will reply nicely. No.
But I
Come
just...
along. I'll show you to your room.
Catherine was led to a tiny hallway just off the kitchen. She was shown what was, in reality, little more than a cupboard.
Here, you must be tired. I've made up the bed.
But...
You must be tired. I've made up the bed.
Ow, don't shove.
I'll let you out for breakfast in the morning. Perhaps your uncle will be there. Perhaps he won't.
And just like that, Catherine found herself in the dark. It was not, in point of fact, all bad. The sun was still up, and a sliver of grey illumination snuck through the crack under the door. Catherine liked to travel equipped, and the dim light gave her just enough illumination to open her valise and find her campfire brave pocket knife, which featured a variety of blades, a magnifying glass, and a very small flashlight. With this, she could observe her surroundings somewhat. There was a small bed, neatly made with badly worn covers. There was a chest with 2 drawers, and a round frame containing one lonely shard of mirror. Inside the tiny bureau, Catherine found candles, and because her scout knife also included a flint and steel, she soon enough had a candle burning. The room was shaped like a wedge. The ceiling was clearly the underside of a staircase, which started on the floor at the foot of Catherine's bed and ended just a few feet above her, where her head lay on the pillow. Every now and again, footsteps tromped up or down the stairs, and each footfall released a small puff of dust onto the bed. The cupboard was, of course, an abomination. But if Catherine had one important trait, it was the inexhaustible belief that no matter how bad things are, they can always be worse.
It is very unfortunate that the narrator should abandon me now that it's several hours later, and night. Perhaps I could try some narration myself. How hard could it be? Sometime later, our heroine huddled under the covers of her bed, which were very scratchy and quite short. Oh, wait, that's not right. Are the covers short and the bed scratchy? This is harder than I thought. Whatever the case, the cupboard Oma had placed her in seemed to stay cold, despite the candle burning at her side. Funny, the candle doesn't seem to grow shorter. It just burns and burns. Anyway, narration. Our heroine was scared, but resolute. Fate had tossed her to this new life in this strange house, and she refused to back down from the challenge. The stairs above her head continued to creak, with very gentle footsteps, though she was fairly certain the entire household had retired hours before. It was an old house, after all, and was entitled to make noise. Even very frightening ones. What is frightening? Our heroine thought to herself. in light of what she'd already been through. A few creaks, a footstep on a stair. What was that compared to? Compared to
what?
Who's there? Please? Who's there? It is quite possible. This is my overactive imagination. I've heard voices in my ear before, only to turn and find no one there. Just because I'm now locked in a twisted old house with mysterious characters and obviously many secrets does not make the likelihood that I'm hearing an actual something increase. Does it? If I were to roll over and look in the direction that voice was coming from, the odds of being paralyzed by a fearful sight are no greater here than in a hallway at school or a modest bohemian bakery. Right? Right?
I don't really know.
The instant Catherine's scream rent the air, the mysterious aberration vanished, and she was quite alone in her cupboard. The rest of the night passed without incident. The next morning, Catherine was released from her cupboard at daybreak. She did not ask Oma about the ghost, nor about her uncle, who did not appear at breakfast. In fact, Catherine did everything she could to be the least bother to anyone, for she had plans for the day, and thought it best if everyone forgot she was even there. After her breakfast, 2 exotic-looking eggs and more of Oma's bread, along with sweet Turkish coffee, Catherine slipped out of the kitchen and found her way to the front room and the door. She moved outside to explore the island. Much of it, of course, was taken up by the large house. But in a matter of 2 hours, she discovered a small forest, apparently occupied. A secret lagoon on the far side of the island, its black waters seemingly alive with something, and the entrance of a very black, apparently large cave, which whispered at her in a disconcerting fashion. The cave was particularly disturbing to Catherine, as she preferred horrors one could see to the invisible kind. But as she was leaving, something on the ground caught her eye.
How perfect.
It was a flat, smooth stone, almost like a coin without engraving. Catherine, who'd been looking for the world's best skipping stone for some time, collected it and slipped it into the pocket of her dress. Then, with a shudder on account of the whispers, she slipped away. All of these adventures took the balance of the morning. She had just come upon the back of the house when suddenly...
Yeah, it's you.
Good morning, Mr. Luntfisk.
She's asking for you. Your dinner's on.
The door would have been impossible to find had it not been opened for her. She went inside and followed the old Norwegian through another maze of corridors to the kitchen, where more bread and a strange kind of salad that moved ever so slightly awaited her. Oma was nowhere to be seen. That was just as well, of course, for Catherine had definite plans for her afternoon. She intended to explore the house next, and didn't want any unscheduled trips to her cupboard interfering. At finishing her plate, she slipped away towards the great hall, being careful not to make a sound. Catherine went first to the large staircase, then up past the massive portrait to the second-floor hallway. There were windows along the hall, and she spent several pleasant moments looking out at the lake through grimy, yellow-stained glass. She decided this was her favorite spot in her new home. To one side of the hallway was a red door, quite in contrast to everything else in the house. As she approached it,
Not speaking above my place, I hope.
she heard voices.
Of course not.
Then you won't mind me saying it was foolishness.
What was I to do? I made a promise.
No good will come of it. That's my promise to you.
As interesting as this was, Catherine endeavored to slip away. She now knew the red door was the inner sanctum of her uncle, and though she longed to meet him, her greater longing was to explore the house further. So she tiptoed away down the hall to the opposite end. Here she found another door, similar in size to the red one. It was only when she scraped a finger in the thick, oily dust that she uncovered evidence of blue paint. This door was the red door's twin, though locked and badly in need of cleaning. But since the lock was no match for her campfire-brave knife, Catherine was soon inside. She found a large room with a fireplace and several musty couches and overstuffed chairs. Unlike the rest of the house, much of this furniture seemed to be of good, even cheery quality. But it had obviously been ignored for a long time and had fallen into disrepair. From this main room, 2 staircases ascended. One branched off to the south. At the top of it, Catherine found an artist's studio filled with canvas, brushes, row upon row of paints, most dried up, and a full-sized wooden mannequin, the type with jointed limbs, allowing him to be posed however the artist wished. Here the windows looked out at the mysterious forest and the lake beyond. She returned to the fireplace room and moved up the other staircase, atop which she found something she had yet to discover at Elderbury Lodge, a door which was ajar. Catherine pushed the door open and was quite overcome with a strange feeling of sadness. She rather enjoyed feelings of sadness most of the time, but this was different. There was something beyond mere gloom about the room. It was an ultimate melancholy. The room was a woman's boudoir, tastefully done in lavender and lace. Though gentler and of a more feminine taste than the rest of the house, this room was definitely still of Elderbury Lodge. She moved to the window and looked out to the north and the tiny dock below. Down there was where the old Norwegian had first brought her to the island. And she suddenly realized she was in the exact window where she had first seen...
This is the mistress's room. How did you get through that door, you wicked girl?
You startled me.
I knew it. I knew you were trouble the minute I laid eyes upon you. This part of the house is closed to everyone.
I'm part of the family.
Well, then it's especially closed to you.
There's no reason to be rude. Please tell me about this room.
This wing of the house is closed.
If you don't tell me, I will go right down past that red door and ask my uncle.
This was the mistress's room.
My aunt, then?
Yes. She died a long time ago. The master wishes her things to remain here untouched by anyone.
I understand. Her spirit haunts this place.
Oh, don't speak foolishness. The swing is closed, that's all. Now come along.
I don't mean to be difficult, you know. I'm just curious.
You notice we have no cats. It's because curiosity killed them all off.
Tell me about my aunt.
No.
How did she die?
She died. That's enough.
But was it an illness? An accident? Murder?
You're a wicked girl.
Why? People are murdered every day. And their murderers are often people close to them. It's a fact.
Nobody murdered your aunt.
Then what killed her?
The curse. The curse that has chased the elderberries for generations. The curse that haunts your uncle still. The curse that will haunt you, little girl, if you don't leave here immediately.
It's very kind of you to worry about me. But I'm afraid I can't take your advice. Curses run in the blood. And my blood comes with me wherever I go.
Oma looked at Catherine with a mixture of sadness and disapproval, then turned back to her pots and pans. Catherine, after a moment or two, slipped out of the kitchen. Already, Catherine had a plan. She moved silently to her cupboard and repacked her valise. Then she slipped upstairs, and having found the blue door locked again, used her campfire brave knife to great effect and slipped inside. Then, with great haste, and no small effort, Catherine set to work on her most important task, barricading the door. She dragged an old table, 3 chairs, and a suit of armor to the task, and after arranging them to maximum effect, stepped back and surveyed her work just in time for...
Fool girl, what have you done to this door?
I'm sorry, Mr. Lundfisk, but I must spend the night in the North Tower.
What? It's impossible, girl. You're in danger.
I know, the curse.
If you know, then stop this foolishness.
I can't, Mr. Lundfisk. This is my destiny.
And with that, Catherine turned away from the door, took her valise, and ascended the north stairs. She crossed over the threshold into her aunt's room and closed the door for the night. And what a night it turned out to be. Catherine settled into her aunt's bedroom, a long way away from the barricaded door. She rather assumed there might be some effort to remove all her hard work in that area, and she didn't really want the sound of hammers and saws ruining her evening. For all of her life she had read stories about haunted houses, and brave people that resolved to sleep in them for just one night. And now, at this difficult place in her life, she felt she had no choice but to take advantage of such an opportunity.
Considering I had also met the ghost personally in the cupboard, it seemed a logical thing to do.
Quite so. But if to this point in our story Catherine seems impossibly brave and boringly resolute, you should know she had one very intense and very common weakness. Thunderstorms. And as sometimes happens in the spring of the year, a vicious storm was brewing out on the lake.
I hope I don't offend you, lying in your bed this way, Auntie. But I really feel that I must find out about my family, as to do so is to find out about myself. Does that make sense? Well, I will pretend it does make sense, for the sake of argument. Your room is very beautiful. Did you do it yourself? Yes, I imagine you did. Auntie, I really don't know why I'm here, but everyone else in the house is very distant. I don't think Oma likes me very much. I can't tell with Mr. Lundfisk, and I have yet to meet Uncle. Is he like his portrait? If so, I think he's very handsome. Yes, I imagine you would feel that way. So I suppose the reason I am here in this room, is that I really don't have anyone else to talk to. And since you took the trouble of introducing yourself in my cupboard the other night, I thought, perhaps, we could be friends. Auntie? I understand, if you'd rather not. What? Is that you? I'm trying not to be afraid, Auntie. I'm trying very hard, but my father left me, and my mother cannot bear to see me anymore because of it, and I had no place else to go. I'm trying not to be afraid.
Fear.
I'm trying not to be afraid. I'm trying not to. I'm trying.
Cease! In the name of God, Elizabeth, cease.
And there, standing in the middle of the room, was a man. In the instant the lightning flashed, Catherine recognized his face from the painting. It was older, of course, and looked lined and worried, but that was to be expected. Artists, after all, are paid to paint one in the best possible light. Catherine remained huddled on the bed, unsure what to say, or what had just happened. She settled on speaking the obvious.
Hello, Uncle Egbert. How did you get in?
There's a secret passageway.
How wonderful. I hoped there would be. I'm sorry.
For what, child?
For disobeying. Oma told me never to come in here.
Apology accepted. Now, I offer one of my own.
For what?
For not coming to see you earlier. For pawning you off on a pair of ill-tempered servants.
It was no problem. I assure you. I rather like them.
Yes, I can see that. I can see, young Catherine, that you have made a habit of liking things which are unlikable. Coincidentally, that's one of my habits.
Spiders?
Oh, I have dozens of them in a terrarium. I have named them all.
Rats?
Too many to count. But I am on very good terms with their king.
Eels?
Well, it's best not to befriend the eels in our waters. I think someone must have been very rude to them once.
Is there any creature you don't like?
Can you keep a secret?
Yes.
Unicorns.
Oh, me too. I am very glad, Uncle Egbert, that we have something in common.
We have much in common, child, but that's not why I came here tonight. I came because you were being foolish. You are playing with ghosts. It's not wise to play with ghosts.
Why not? I thought it was my auntie.
Ah, yes, I could understand that. I used to think the same thing. But it's only in stories that a ghost is just a loved one you can see through. In real life, it's more complicated than that. Much, much more complicated. And I can see now that exposing you to all this was a mistake. I shouldn't have allowed you to come.
No.
Tomorrow morning I will call your mother.
No.
And we shall make arrangements. I am sorry, child. You must return to your room now.
But Uncle,
Come with me, and I will walk you back to your room.
The next morning, a steady rain was falling. Catherine, who had not slept, rose from her cupboard, packed her valise, and sat on the edge of the bed until Oma released her. She wore a smug, satisfied smile, Oma did. This was obviously the conclusion she had hoped for. Catherine had nothing to say. Her only form of expression was a single tear that rolled down her cheek.
Your bread's on the table. Eat quick. Luntfisk will be taking you back to shore directly.
And Catherine moved, without a sound, into the kitchen, where she suddenly stopped.
Uncle!
Master?
My dear woman, would you give us a moment?
Yes, of course.
I believe I may have shocked my cook beyond repair. I have not been in her kitchen for quite some time.
She may never recover.
One can only hope. But I'm not here to jest, child. I'm here because I made a rather remarkable discovery.
I love remarkable discoveries.
When my beloved Elizabeth was alive, she liked nothing better than to paint. She especially loved spring on this island. We have a particular wildflower here of a remarkable shade of blue. She painted it many, many times, but I never recall seeing this.
Is that the stone I found?
I have no idea.
Yes, it's the stone. I found this at the entrance of the Whispering Cave.
Look on the flat side.
Oh, it's beautiful. That's called toe painting, when you decorate an object. Is that the flower you spoke of?
Yes. Yes, it is.
What does this mean?
I'm unsure, but I am certain this stone was not in her room before this morning.
Oh.
Oma, I can hear you breathing there by the doorway. Come in.
Yes, Master, what is it?
Catherine's things are to be moved to the north wing,
What?
What?
and I shall contact my sister straight away. Catherine is remaining with us. Temporarily. Do you understand that, child? Temporarily.
Yes, Uncle, I understand.
So as you can see, our story is very real in its unreality. For you must think that our young heroine, full of courage and perseverance, has righted wrongs, won the hearts of all around her, and completely ruled the day. But the truth is much, much worse than that. But no new stories can be written unless old ones come to an end. And that is where we are. The end.
This has been Northern Gothic by the Icebox Radio Theater, featuring Jeffrey Adams as Uncle Egbert and Mr. Lundfisk, Ayla McIntosh as Oma and the Ghost, and Rachel Adams as Catherine. Your narrator this evening was Mr. Douglas Screef. This program written, directed, and post-produced by Jeffrey Adams. Sound effects created by Dave Irwin. This program copyright 2011 by the Icebox Radio Theater, all rights reserved. On the web at iceboxradio.org. It can be in the sound of the orchestra preparing, or in the sound of a sculptor working in stone, or even in the sound of laughter from inside a theater. It is the sound of art being created, and for over 3 decades, the sound of art being created has rung loud and clear in northeastern Minnesota. The Arrowhead Regional Arts Council has been encouraging local arts development in northeastern Minnesota through grants and services for over 35 years. Every year, they give out more than $500,000 to local artists and arts organizations, and that helps create $40 million in revenue and jobs created. To find out more about our arts programs or how you can get involved, visit aracouncil.org. The Arrowhead Regional Arts Council, where the arts flourish, you thrive.